Over to the U.S., where support continues to slip for U.S. President Joe Biden's re-election campaign, both among Democratic politicians and American voters. A New York Times Siena poll released today shows that Donald Trump's lead over Biden has widened since last week's disastrous debate. The national survey finds that Trump is now ahead of Biden by 6 percentage points among likely voters. And a whopping 74% of voters now see Biden as too old for the job. Still, Biden is vowing to stay in the race, rejecting growing pressure to withdraw. Here's the White House press secretary addressing that pressure yesterday.
Look, I cannot lay out something that would change the president's mind. He has been very clear, and he's going to continue to build on the unprecedented record that he's been able to lay out for the American people. That's his focus right now.
Biden also held a series of meetings yesterday to try to calm concerns, including one with Democratic governors of states across the nation. After that meeting, some of the attendees voiced their support for the president to continue his campaign. Have a listen.
The president has three and a half years of delivering for us, going through what we've all been through. None of us are denying Thursday night was a bad performance. It was a bad hit, if you will, on that. But it doesn't impact what I believe he's delivering.
Came together tonight to listen to President Biden tell us, in his own words, what his plans were. I'm here to tell you today, President Joe Biden is in it to win it. And all of us said we pledged our support to him because the stakes could not be higher.
A lot of damage control happening, but is it successful? For some analysis, we welcome Christian Hanley to the program. He's a Democratic strategy consultant in Washington, D.C. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you joining us here on France 24. Now, all public signals from Biden and the Democratic Party indicate that Biden is not going anywhere. I got an email just this morning from the Democratic Party titled, "Joe Biden is in." But we know there are still conversations happening in Washington about whether he should step aside. So what does Biden need to do in the coming days to stop these conversations?
Well, that's an excellent framing of the question because it really does come down to the next few days. The impact of Thursday night is still being felt. Like you said, some of the polling only just came out as recently as today, but I went back and double checked the state by state polling as well, because we have to remember that in the United States, there's not one national presidential election. There are elections held in all the different states and territories and D.C. And so they're all separate. So, each candidate has to win within their respective states. And in some of these states, the way the numbers have shifted is really quite startling since last Thursday, even in places like New Hampshire that are now starting to drift more into Trump's camp, places that were toss-ups now moving into the red, into Trump's camp. So what Biden has to do in the next several days and really over this holiday weekend is show that Thursday night was just a fluke, was not how he's normally operating, because what happened Thursday night was that his performance is not just being seen as a performance. What it's being seen as proof that he does not have the mental capacity to continue the job for the next 4 years, and it just reinforces the negative image that the Trump campaign has been casting about President Biden ever since he took office in 2021.
But it's interesting you say that, because the Republicans have been relatively quiet in recent days since the debate. Do you think that the GOP and Trump would prefer that Biden stays? Is that why we haven't heard Trump attacking Biden the way that he usually does?
I have no insight into that world. It's a very insular one, especially now with Trump at the head of that party. But I think that if I were to make an educated guess, it's that because they realize how negative Thursday night's performance has landed, and they want to have that be lingering in the air, if you will. So what's happening right now in the days since last Thursday is the Biden White House and the Biden campaign needs to completely change the tone in the media. If Trump remains quiet, as he mostly has been since then the last thing on people's minds about this campaign and this election is that debate performance that went so horribly for Biden. So for him to stay quiet right now is, I hate to say it, is sort of a smart move on his part.
So say the damage control doesn't go well in the coming days. Who in Biden's inner circle or in the Democratic Party leadership could come to Biden and say, listen, it's over, it's time? Or is this a decision that's really 100% up to him?
It's 100% up to him. We had a similar conversation about this on the France 24 French channel just yesterday. It's possible that he could hear from his wife, from his close family members, his advisors, but really it comes down to his decision. And so no one's going to be able to force his hand. But that's also not going to stop the conversations from happening among strategists and donors about what the future might be, because we really have not had a completely open convention where there is fights on the floor and people are jockeying for that first place to become the next nominee, really since 1968. Also, ironically, in Chicago. That didn't go well, of course. But so there's really about 56 or so years of precedent here of the nominee being more or less decided before the convention even starts. So, it's going to be up to Biden to make that decision ahead of Chicago.
Right. It hasn't happened in very modern history, but I mean, there are still people alive, including Joe Biden, who remember how this works. And I mean, the Democratic Party, it's a huge apparatus. They could make it work. So say Biden does make the decision to step down, to hand over the campaign. Do you think that it's most likely that he just says, go all in on Kamala Harris, his vice president, or if he does have it be a totally open convention, who else could we be looking at potentially?
Well, I won't say what he's most likely to do, because right now there's no indication he's stepping down whatsoever. There's only the talk of everybody else outside of that inner circle, right now, like we're having right now. But that is one possibility, is leaving it to Kamala Harris. There are obviously some risks there. She does not have the same sort of reputation that Joe Biden does. And, I will remind viewers that this race is going to come down to who can pull it off in Pennsylvania, in Wisconsin, in Arizona, in Georgia, in these key swing states. So Kamala Harris would be I would say the easiest choice. She's already on the ticket. It would be easy for her to simply just pick up the campaign and keep moving forward. That being said, there is no shortage of great Democratic potential candidates out there, whether it's Gavin Newsom in California, Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan. I think that's really what is making a lot of people, both inside the party and just average voters right now, kind of scratching their heads about how we're at this place in this campaign when there is such a deep bench of Democratic talent. Joe Biden served his role and his purpose in 2020 and has done really an admirable job as a governing president ever since then. But why are we here right now when there really is no lack of talent in the party, even at the highest levels?
Yeah, Christian, I was doom scrolling on Twitter yesterday. A bad habit I need to stop doing. But I noticed something really interesting that's happening around Kamala Harris online. The left appears to be kind of pumping her up using memes and trying to, create a persona around her as kind of like, the big sister of politics in a way. And then on the right side, you're seeing people really viciously attacking her. So is there sort of a shadow campaign going on online where, of course, not the Republican Party or the Democratic Party are doing this, but we're seeing, affiliated groups and, right-wing personalities that appear to be kind of going after Kamala just in case?
Yeah, look, I would caution folks about reading too much into what they see on Twitter. I forget what the exact percentages and numbers are now. Ever since Elon Musk bought the platform, it really has fallen off. But it is something like, the loudest 5 or 10% of people on the platform really drive the algorithm and shape the news on there. So I would not read into it too much. That being said, I think that there is probably some fighting on that front, simply because, she would be the obvious next choice. She is next in line after Joe Biden. That is, unless we have a totally open convention or something else were to happen. But that really is what's going on there. But again, I can recall vividly working on a campaign several years ago where everyone in the room was talking about all these great numbers they were seeing coming off Twitter. And I was just thinking to myself, like, guys, these are not registered voters in the district where we're working right now. This is just, internet traffic. You can't go by that. And
yeah, but this is, TikTok, Instagram as well. And I mean, we know, especially with young voters, with, voters who maybe aren't the most engaged in politics, this is a big driver of how they, frame their decisions in politics.
It would be the political equivalent of soft power, though, right? It is not correlate directly to who is a registered voter and where they are registered, because again, this election will come down to several key swing states. Other states are already in the bag for their two respective camps, right? So yes, there is that element to it. There is that influence that these platforms have, but I would just caution folks about how much they read into the direct impact they have on the outcome of the election. Powerful influence, to be sure, but it's not very direct.
I want to ask you one last question. With your experience as a strategist, voters in the U.S. have been concerned about Biden's age ever since he announced he was running again, way before last week's debate. Do you think that Biden's team has just been ignoring these concerns, or did they really not think that his age was an issue?
I mean, that's a very small inner circle that could answer that question accurately. I looking from the outside, looking into that inner circle, I would say it's most likely that I think they could have been almost as surprised as the larger public was last week, because, Joe Biden is 81, but he also, as recently as, a few days before the debate, was seen, full of energy out there on the campaign trail. I mean, he was going back and forth to Europe twice, then out to LA for a massive fundraiser. And I'm half his age, and I could not have pulled that off. That'd be exhausting. But on the other hand, he's been doing the most stressful job in the world now for several years at that advanced age. It's quite possible that, the job is getting to him now, and that can take anyone by surprise. I mean, he is 81. And I think the real concern, though, is not just, what he's done so far. His record in the White House has been admirable. It's surpassed any expectations I had. But the thinking is, okay, well, if this is his performance now at 81, what will it look like 3-4 years from now when he's getting closer to 85, 86?
Democratic strategy consultant Christian Hanley, thank you so much for your time. Hope to have you back again soon here on France 24.